Hi, good afternoon. Thank you guys for staying presentation. Thank you. Today we're going to be presenting on Alternative Medicine Associates. My name is Dana, and I'm going to go over the company overview.
My name is Shreya, and I'm going to be talking about the legal history.
My name is Elbatul. I'm going to be talking about the current legal environment.
My name is Gara. I'm going to talk about the importance of diversity in cannabis business.
I am Amber McGill, and I am going to discuss the future research we would do as well as the people we would connect with if we were to pursue this case.
Our company overview. So, American Alternative Medicine Associates was started by a doctor and a group of healthcare professionals who decided that they want to further explore the cultivation and usage of cannabis in as medicine, integrated with traditional forms of medicine to give a more integrated form of treatment plans to their patients. The patients that they primarily focus on are cancer patients, HIV/AIDS, Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis, and several other medical conditions. So the markets that they're currently in are New York, Maryland, and they have plans to expand to Florida and Pennsylvania soon. So a brief history on the CEOs. Dr. Greg Daniel is a medical doctor. He has over 20 years of medical experience as an ER physician. He's also licensed to practice in 8 states. He founded the Exigence Group in 2000, which goes to his extensive business background. It is an actual healthcare service that he grew and sold in 2012 for a 9-figure amount, so that's pretty successful there. He also has his BA and MD from the University of Wisconsin in Madison and MBA from University of California, Irvine. So the products that they're working on currently are a ready-dose infusion, so that is an oral syringe infusion that they would give to mainly children. Also tinctures, which using a droplet, they would give CBD to adults, and it can be altered for potency reasons for people who would require a high dosage. Gel capsules, tablets, vapes for smoking, and that can really produce really high psychological effects. And lotions and salves for more topical usage for ailments like psoriasis, dermatitis, and different aches and pains in the body.
Thank you, Dana. So one of the greatest problems that the company is facing right now is that alternative medicine would like to expand into Maryland. However, they're having problems doing this because they don't just want to distribute in Maryland, but they also want to cultivate in Maryland. And we didn't really go into this during class discussion, but this distinction is really important because if you are a cultivator instead of just a distributor of medical marijuana, then you really have the power to sort of direct market forces. You can create market prices if you are producing the product, and you also really have sort of a legs up if marijuana is ever actually legalized because you're already producing. So one of the problems that they faced as they were entering the Maryland market was with the Maryland Medicinal Cannabis Commission. So just a little background on the Maryland Medicinal Cannabis Commission. It was created in 2013 by the Department of Health's independent agency, and they're tasked with the safety, licensing, and regulating of medicinal marijuana. They also give out licenses to growers, dispensers, as well as processors. So in Maryland in 2014, that is when medicinal marijuana was legalized, pursuant to House Bill 991 and Senate Bill 923. And then in 2016, the company actually sued the commission, and this was because the commission, the main issue in this case was whether the commission is required to consider racial diversity when awarding licenses. And the problem was that the commission awarded 15 licenses to 15 different companies. However, they were all white-owned and not minority-owned. And so alternative medicine sued the commission. But Pooja mentioned that sometimes legal issues are resolved over a long period of time. Well, sometimes they are not resolved at all. So as it goes, this case went up to the highest court in Maryland, but then it was remanded to the lower court based on civil procedure intricacies, I guess. And so then a year later, in 2017, the commission issued an apology and a diversity statement, saying that they would hire a diversity consultant, and they would also be conducting minority surveys annually.
All right, thank you, Shreya. Now, as a result of the legal proceedings that were mentioned by Shreya, Maryland lawmakers have finally identified the issue, and they finally recently approved legislation to expand the marijuana medical business, and they actually considered racial contribution as well to the industry. Now, the State House of Delegates will plan to issue 20 licenses for the business, and they mandated the State Cannabis Commission to put and implement guidelines for racial consideration to issue these licenses. Now, some people were happy with this bill, but some other legislators were criticizing it because when they revealed it, they actually had some reserved licenses to some white-owned businesses. So one of them argued that not all of the businesses can afford a lobbyist, and not all of them can go on knocking on senators' doors to get their business license. Now, as you can see here, the differences in the numbers shows a significant number of white-owned facilities for growing marijuana, and very insignificant number for the minority-owned facilities.
Speaking of the importance of diversity in the cannabis business, we have to mention the high employment rate and the different racial groups in Maryland State. Based on that, it's really important to fill the gap by focusing on the economic growth of that state. How are we going to focus on that economic growth? We're going to focus by allowing more diverse groups to enter the market, either by more growers owning their businesses, or owning more facilities to grow. It's really important. It's really important because that would allow them to empower locals, and that will make local contribute to the growth of the Maryland economy.
So if we were to actually do this case, what would be the additional research that we would need to do in order to make a recommendation to our client? So we want to look at when is their licensure process reopening. We need to know when the board or when the commission is going to allow new growers to apply, so we know what is our deadline. What are we working up against? We need to know the key influencers. What people really make this decision? Who can we talk to that we can get a true understanding of what you're looking for and position us in a place where we're providing all of those things? Why were we rejected in the first place? If there's a particular reason that our client was rejected, we can resolve that and figure out what we need to change in our processes in order to not have that come up again in the future. Any legislation that's proposed for a regulatory change. As it stands currently, no grower, the owners, nor the employees can have any criminal record. So that restricts a lot of growers, a lot of people from being able to be involved in this industry. If there's any legislation going up to potentially change that, then that could affect the impact of us getting into the industry or getting into the state of Maryland as a grower. Also, what was the approval process in the state of New York, and how are we currently operating there? What did we do in New York that we can maybe mirror and do the same thing here in order to get us to have that grower's license? And then lastly, what will be the fiscal impacts of this on not only the company, but on the communities we're going to be going into and that we're going to be affecting with our being a grower. And then how, of course, are we going to get this information? The first person we will talk to is obviously the CEO. He knows everything about the company because it's his. We want to get in with him, have a conversation, what exactly they want to do, what they've tried to do, and what we can do differently moving forward. We want to speak with a representative from the Maryland Medical Cannabis Commission. They know what they're looking for. They know why different companies weren't accepted. They may not be able to give us specifics, but they can at least give us information so we can understand what we need to do differently moving forward. And then lastly, representative from the pre-approved companies, those who beat us out. There were 15 companies that were approved. Find an owner or representative who is willing to explain to us, what are you doing that we're not doing? So we can figure out what that is and make those changes in order to be approved in the state of Maryland. Any questions, comments? Yes.
So I'm understanding this correctly, you're advocating for more minority-owned cannabis manufacturing facilities?
Yes. So essentially, our client is a minority-owned cannabis grower.
Mhm.
So we want them, our main focus is to get them approved to grow in the state of Maryland. Ultimately, that will create a precedent so there can be more overall.
So law-abiding minorities are already in the crosshairs of federal law enforcement agencies as it is. You don't think that by expanding the market of minority growers wouldn't just make them even more targeted than?
It could, it may, but I mean, even if it did, that's not necessarily a reason for us not to. Like, we can't be scared that we're gonna be in more trouble to not do it. If anything, we need to do it so that we can do it well and address the legal issues on the other side. Yes.
So you mentioned some of the legal issues going on and it being remanded back down to lower court. Has there been any discussion of partnering with other minority-owned groups to try to bring a lawsuit?
Yeah, that's a great question. So actually, the case, the civil procedure intricacies that I was talking about was there was actually a motion to intervene. So a lot of other dispensaries in the area wanted to join in. So there was a motion for joinder to join in and also advocate for on behalf of diversity owners.
So living in Maryland, I know that a lot of minorities in Maryland tend to be focused in Montgomery County, Howard County, and PG County. So I was just curious, as you guys were researching a lot of the dispensary owners and growers, were they concentrated in certain parts of Maryland from what you could tell, or were they a bit more spread out?
Well, so we didn't look too deeply into a large variety. We kind of focused in on our particular client. However, it wasn't an obvious concentration. Like they're all in one county or they're all in one place. They were relatively spread out. There are 15 growers, and there's hundreds of dispensaries. So the dispensaries kind of go all across the state, and so that varies by county. Any other questions? Great job.